Hello, my name is Sharon Giordano. I'm the Chair of Health Services Research at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. In this lecture, I will be covering the uses of observational data in comparative effectiveness research. The learning objectives of this module are to determine when to use observational studies in comparative effectiveness research and to describe potential selection biases in observational studies. Our third objective is to identify potential data sources for observational studies in clinical research and cancer research. Part 1, what is comparative effectiveness research? CER definition and study design. The learning objectives for this section are to define comparative effectiveness research and the purpose of CER, and to recognize different CER study designs. So let's start with the most basic question. What is comparative effectiveness research? This is a definition from the Institute of Medicine. Comparative effectiveness research is the generation and synthesis of evidence that compares the benefits and harms of alternative methods to prevent, diagnose, treat, and monitor a clinical condition, or to improve the delivery of care. The purpose of comparative effectiveness research is to assist consumers, clinicians, purchasers, and policymakers to make informed decisions that will improve healthcare at both the individual and the population levels. The Federal Coordinating Council for Comparative Effectiveness Research has expanded on this definition. They comment that comparative effectiveness research includes the conduct and synthesis of research comparing the benefits and harms of different interventions in real-world settings, with the purpose of determining which interventions are most effective for which patients under which specific circumstances. Therefore, comparative effectiveness research must make judgments about whether the available research evidence reflects real-world practice, and should make clear for which patients and which circumstances the research conclusions can be used to make clinical or policy decisions. So how does comparative effectiveness research differ from other clinical research? First, comparative effectiveness research is focused on direct, head-to-head comparisons of competing treatments. A topic for comparative effectiveness research needs to be directly related to clinical decision-making. So these are topics that have very direct, important relevance. The study design and the endpoints should be relevant to a wide group of stakeholders. So this group would include patients, but also clinicians, purchasers, and policymakers. And the study population for comparative effectiveness research should be generally representative of those in clinical practice. And this is a very important point. When we're doing comparative effectiveness studies, we want to make sure that the population we're studying is diverse and generally representative. So let me give you an example of a comparative effectiveness research study. This is a study on chemotherapy toxicity in older women that I was a part of. This was published by Dr. Barsenis in the Journal of Clinical Oncology. The goal of this study was to evaluate the comparative toxicity of different chemotherapy regimens that all have similar efficacy and used to treat older women with early-stage breast cancer. So is this comparative effectiveness research? Yes. Why? So this is comparative effectiveness research because we're directly comparing the harms of different interventions. It also is a real-world setting. The data we used for this study came from a population-based sample of older women in the CER Medicare database and the Texas Cancer Registry Medicare database. So this is a diverse population of patients, and it represents real clinical practice. And what the study showed was substantial variation in the risk of hospitalizations across the different chemotherapy regimens. So this is a finding that's highly relevant to clinical decision-making. There's been a lot of interest in comparative effectiveness research because the U.S. government has invested quite a bit of money over the past decade to have a research emphasis in this area. In 2003, under the Medicare Prescription Drug Improvement and Modernization Act, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, or AHRQ, was authorized to create the Effective Healthcare Program. The goal of this program was to conduct and support research with a focus on comparing outcomes and effectiveness of different treatments. In 2008, Congress doubled the effective healthcare budget to $30 million. In 2009, with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, over $1.1 billion was allocated to comparative effectiveness research. And of that, $300 million went to the Effective Healthcare Program at ARC. In 2010, under the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, PCORI was established. Now, the goal of PCORI has a mandate to improve the quality and relevance of evidence available to help patients, caregivers, clinicians, employers, insurers, and policymakers make informed health decisions. Specifically, PCORI funds comparative effectiveness research, or CER, as well as support work that improves the methods used to conduct such studies. So with all of these investments together, there's been a large increasing emphasis on studies that are doing comparative effectiveness research. So what type of study designs are comparative effectiveness research? Certainly, comparative effectiveness studies can include randomized studies. Pragmatic clinical trials can often be used. These are clinical trials that really enroll a representative patient population and have care delivery as it would be in normal clinical practice. It could also include a cluster randomized trial, where instead of having the patient being the unit of randomization, the randomization unit could be a practice or a physician group. And also adaptive trials. Research synthesis is another commonly used approach to comparative effectiveness research. In this approach, existing data are used to make conclusions about benefits of treatment. These methods you're going to hear about in other lectures and include decision analysis, systematic reviews, and meta-analysis. I'm going to focus in this lecture on observational studies. Observational study designs can include cohort studies, case control studies, cross-sectional designs, and others. And I will discuss these in more detail on future slides. And now we will have a short quiz.